Well, here we are at the Game of Thrones Season 7 finale. The Dragon and the Wolf. And what would be more appropriate to say to start off this breakdown than, let's do this. What is happening, viewers? Professor of Thrones here, back again for another episode breakdown. Why am I wearing sunglasses, you may ask? Because I feel like wearing sunglasses, baby. I know this was a season finale. We all expected a lot. We're all still mourning the passing of these 7 momentous episodes. That is why I am not here today to sugarcoat anything. I'm going to break down this episode with an analytical lens. I know how many people will just continuously rant at me saying how amazing this episode was or how this episode was complete garbage. You know what? Objectivity is BS. It doesn't exist. So I'm going to give you my perspective, my personal opinions on this episode. And those opinions just happen to be very mixed. There were a lot of elements that I thought were absolutely fantastic, but there were a lot of elements that I thought were very weak, very contrived, and overall very sloppy. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. We finally have the in-person meeting that has been built up for about half of this season. Daenerys and her allies meet with Cersei and her allies in person in the Dragon Pits in King's Landing. Perfect location for this meeting. It's so interesting to see all of these characters back together in one place. I would say that the showrunners put it best in their after-episode commentary. We spent season upon season expanding this world, and now that we're getting to Endgame, it's time to contract it inwards. If there's anything I enjoyed the most about this season, it's definitely all these characters from different walks of life in different areas of the world coming together for the Endgame. The tensity of this meeting was revved up. It was handled perfectly. You were constantly on edge, constantly nervous at all times. You didn't know when one side was going to snap, one side was going to attack, whether it would be Daenerys who incites it, whether it be Cersei who incites it. And by the end, no one really incites any violence, but a lot of the mental game of war was played here. Now, although it didn't really make much sense in the context, it was nice to see that little encounter between the Hound and the Mountain. Clegane Bowl will be happening next season, so calm down, fans. They're definitely going to fight, and the Hound is definitely going to kill the Mountain. That was a nice little build up there, but like I said, it did feel weird in the context. How did no one attack in that situation when one person on Daenerys' side was rapidly approaching a person on Cersei's side? Now, after some stalling and dilly-dallying, Daenerys finally arrives. It's so tragic to see her with only 2 dragons. They try to rev it up with the epic music, but it just didn't feel the same, 2 instead of 3. If you're a fiction writer such as myself, you know the rule of 3s and how it's definitely the most potent number for effect. Her dragons just don't pose the same threat. Speaking of dragon threat, I love how Cersei doesn't even wince at the sight of dragons, yet freaks out when she sees one contained white. It just shows where her priorities are and where her mental state is. So, speaking of that white, the Hound brings up the box and opens it. Now, I was expecting him to open the box and it would be empty and there would be this crazy action set piece of the White trying to run around King's Landing and people trying to stop him. But no, they decided to take the straightforward route. The White was there and presented to Cersei in a threatening manner. I love how you see all the different characters' reactions to this incident. Perhaps the most interesting was Qyburn, since he's so obsessed with reanimating people and bringing people back from the dead. His dabbling in necromancy was what got him kicked out of the Citadel in the first place, so naturally he's going to be drawn toward this reanimated corpse. The way he examined the hand with pure fascination was so indicative of his character. Now, when Euron sees the single white and cowers away, bringing all of his fleet back to the Iron Islands, I knew something was suspicious here. I knew Euron, of all people, wouldn't cower that easily. Obviously, my suspicion was proved right later, but we'll get back to that. Now, it seems this meeting is surprisingly going well. Everything seems to be running smoothly, but then Cersei demands that Jon doesn't choose a side in the Daenerys-Cersei conflict. She requires that he remain neutral until the War for the Dawn is complete. Obviously, Cersei tries to egg him on with the whole Ned Stark's son business. It just instills that guilt in Jon. He knows Ned Stark would be honest to a fault, so practicing in who he believes to be his father's footsteps, He does not lie to Cersei and admits that he pledged allegiance to Daenerys already. This enrages Cersei, obviously, and she calls off the truce and the war shall continue. It seems that all hope is lost and that Team Daenerys may have failed, but there is one weapon left in their arsenal, one political strategy that they still have remaining. Tyrion decides he is going to be the one to convince Cersei, and he goes up to the Red Keep. Seeing Tyrion walk through the council room towards Cersei was an amazing scene, simply because he used to be a council member, and he used to practically own that room and control everyone in it. Now he is completely victimized, completely weak, completely in the lower position in this dynamic. The way they posed that fear as he was walking through that room on his face was done absolutely perfectly. It's just such a great role reversal. And this conversation between Tyrion and Cersei was definitely one of the best in the season. Like I said last episode, if Peter Dinklage doesn't win any Emmys this time around, I'm going to be shocked. Lena Headey probably put on her best performance of the season here too. The pure emotion she showed when referencing her family and discussing her family was very indicative of Cersei's weakness and Cersei's deep, dark truths. She seems to always be calm, cold, and calculated, yet when her family comes into question, she sort of snaps and loses all of her composure and breaks down. And that's one of the many reasons why Cersei is one of the best characters in the entire series and one of the best fictional characters ever written, for that matter. And even when Tyrion, the one who put her entire family in jeopardy, the one who caused her so much pain, gives her an opening to kill him, she just can't do it because he's family. This does make a scene that happens later very confusing, which I will get to. However, it was really great to see Cersei's absolute biggest weakness in play. Now, with regards to Cersei's pregnancy, there's a lot of theories going around. They all tie into the Valonqar prophecy, which, if you aren't familiar with, I will be discussing in a separate video. However, the most applicable element of the Valonqar prophecy to discuss here is that Cersei will only have 3 children. Now, as you know, she already had Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen, and they all died as the prophecy foretold. Therefore, theories regarding Cersei's pregnancy often involve that it will end in a miscarriage, that Jaime will kill her before she's able to give birth. However, I'm starting to think that maybe Cersei isn't pregnant at all. Maybe this is a lie she constructed, a lie she crafted to manipulate everyone around her. She may be using this to keep hold of Jaime, maybe using this to manipulate Tyrion in this situation. We don't really see any further of that. We have to fill in the blanks for the rest of their conversation. However, when Tyrion returns to the Dragon Pit, so does Cersei and company behind them. Cersei is convinced. She decides to temporarily halt her war with Daenerys to help Daenerys and Jon defeat the White Walkers. I knew right away she was lying here, but before we get back to her lies, I do want to point out a quick scene that happened right before this revelation. Daenerys and Jon, alone in the corner of the Dragon Pit, had a great conversation that was really meant to just solidify their chemistry for a scene to come at the end of the episode. We all knew it was coming. The episode is called The Dragon and the Wolf after all. But the question comes up of Daenerys' ability to have children once again. Jon makes an interesting point here. Should Daenerys really be trusting a random witch from Essos to determine her childbirthing abilities? Now, if you recall back to Mira Mazdol, she did have legitimate magic and legitimate ability. However, if you recall back to how she informed Daenerys that she wouldn't be able to have any more children, she did say only until the sun rises in the west and sets in the east. This may have something to do with Jon. As we now know, he was born in Dorne, whose nation symbol is a giant sun. Now, I can't take full credit for this revelation. It was actually my roommate Jordy's idea, but I thought it was definitely really interesting to bring up. We'll get back to Cersei, Jon and Daenerys, King's Landing very soon, but for now, let's travel to Winterfell for a little bit. In what is one of the most satisfying scenes in recent memory, we finally get Littlefinger's demise. I'm not really sure if Sansa and Arya were playing the long game with Littlefinger this entire time, or if she just realized after the conversation they had minutes prior. Prior to the scene, Littlefinger taught Sansa his sociopathic human evaluation game, in which he inspects the worst and traces the worst logical conclusion as to why a person is doing what they are doing. He helps Sansa to supposedly realize that Arya is doing this so she become Lady of Winterfell, but right then and there, Sansa probably put the puzzle pieces together. Arya adamantly never wanted to become a lord. She never wanted to rule any location. She wanted to be a warrior. That's probably where Sansa put the puzzle pieces together and realized Littlefinger is trying to pit them against each other. The way they turned on him was so great. Littlefinger has always been completely calm, collected. He has always been cocky, on top of every situation. He always was the manipulator. And now the tables have turned and you see his complete shock. And the looks on his face were absolutely perfect. I was like, yes, this is perfect. This is awesome. Yes. After 7 seasons of him fucking everyone over and screwing everyone to get ahead for himself, he's finally in the weak position. He's finally lost his power. My only concern was that the Knights of the Vale would still be loyal to him and turn on Sansa, but then we see him beg the Knights of Vale to escort him back to the Vale, and they're just like, nah, sorry, man. I knew right off the bat that Arya would be the one to kill him, and she's probably going to take Littlefinger's face, which would be even greater. I also knew right off the bat that Bran would be the one to reveal the information that he betrayed Ned. It was a perfect instance of a seasonal arc wrapping up, everything coming together and going against one character. But I feel I've exhausted everything I can say about that scene. It was fantastic. 10 out of 10. Probably the best scene in the episode. So let's take a break from Winterfell a little bit and go back to King's Landing. Cersei's officially gone crazy. If she hadn't already, she just doesn't know what she's doing anymore. She has no concept of strategy, no concept of the long term, only the short term, protecting herself and her loved ones. This was made evident in her interaction with Jaime, in which she reveals that she was tricking Daenerys and not actually planning to go north. I called this right off the bat. There was no way she would secede her power that easily to help the Dragon Queen. What do you know? I called it. She hired the Golden Company. The night of this episode, my Golden Company Explained video actually had this huge surge in views. It's up to like 700 and something right now, and it seems to be only skyrocketing from here. But despite that reveal, and despite Cersei putting on a great performance, I was very confused by this scene. It really didn't make much sense. Perhaps the main physical manifestation of what she's been fighting for this entire time, the selfish love she has for her family members, it all comes in the form of Jaime. So why did she just turn on him and snap at him at all this point? I thought she was fighting so she could have this relationship with Jaime. That's why the scene, in all honesty, made little to no sense to me. I know she's going crazy, and I know she's absolutely lost it. If anything, with her insanity developing, she should be even more in character. I actually had genuine fear for Jaime in this scene. Not because I expected Cersei to kill him, but because would poor writing do it? Would poor writing get the job done? I mean, come on. She doesn't end up killing him, but the conclusion to this scene is hidden from us, so it's very confusing as to what actually happened. Did Jaime beat the mountain and escape? Did Jaime run away in the dead of the night after Cersei pardoned him? She just accused him of treachery, and yet he's riding away fine. We had this whole scene earlier in which she refused to kill Tyrion, one of her mortal enemies, because he was family. So why was she so ready to go against Jaime? Like I've said, I really don't get what's happening here. I really don't understand this scene, and it was very weird to me, and I hope next season elaborates on it. Now, to where Jaime's going? I'm guessing he is going to help Daenerys and Tyrion. I mean, what else would he be doing right now? It was so rushed and so confusing. I just don't get what's going on anymore with that arc. As Jaime is leaving King's Landing, it begins to snow there, which, for context, is very, very rare. It means winter is finally upon us, and I think it's very symbolic of the White Walker threat to come. Just imagine it like snow in South Florida. I think that's the best analogy I could give to United States Game of Thrones fans such as myself. Moving back to Winterfell, let's talk about even more stuff that made me mad. Bran and Samwell finally reunite. They're going to be the dynamic duo of knowledge in the final season, it seems like. But this whole scene was one of the worst in the episode, let alone season. Everyone knew that Jon's parents were Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen at this point. All the puzzle pieces were there. I don't know why they needed to contrivedly force feed it down our throats. We're not babies. You don't need to spoon feed us this way, and especially in such a crappy way. You just had Bran having Weirwood flashbacks at random points, just kind of interspliced with this whole other conversation he's having with Sam. From a cinematographic standpoint, the flashbacks were very good, but it just didn't really fit here. It just didn't feel right. What is perhaps my biggest concern of this scene is when they reveal Jon's true name. This would be all fine and well if Rhaegar didn't have another kid already named Aegon. How could Jon be named Aegon if he already had a kid named Aegon? You know what? I'm getting mad. The sunglasses are going off. That's right, you're gonna see my eyes right now. I'm gonna look you in the eye and tell you how pissed off I am at this scene. They already did this reveal in the season 6 finale. Why'd they have to do a similarly crafted scene again? It was definitely the worst scene in this episode, and as a fan, it made me really, really angry. The writers were just putting themselves on this elitist high horse, like, ha, we're better than you, we're smarter than you, we're gonna baby you. And it pissed me off, as you could see from me yelling about this for 5 whole minutes now. But if anything good came out of this scene, it's that Jon pretty much is confirmed to be Azor Ahai. With all the sword stuff from last episode and all these scenes in this episode, it seems pretty obvious that Jon is the prince who was promised. I'm going to do a completely separate video explaining why Jon is Azor Ahai, but for now, what I can say is that he meets every single characteristic of Azor Ahai perfectly, so it's probably going to be him. Moving back to Dragonstone real quick before the climax of the episode, in a meeting between Jon, Daenerys, and the rest of the company, Jorah sort of realizes what's going on between Jon and Daenerys. He realizes that he's lost his chance and that Jon and Daenerys are going to be a thing. I'm still surprised why Jorah didn't die this season. I still believe he's going to die in the same way I predicted, protecting Daenerys, saving her next season. I'm happy to see Theon finally rounding up his character arc. He's finally coming full circle and regaining his confidence and becoming the character he was meant to be all along. This seems like the probable route that George R. R. Martin was going to take with this character, so I'm really satisfied that the showrunners are taking this route as well. The only confusing thing to me about Theon's confrontation with which were supposedly Yara's men is their quick readiness to just abandon Yara in her time of need. They were her biggest supporters. It didn't really make sense to me why they would do that so rashly and boldly and so quickly. Yet Theon awesomely kicks his ass, retakes control over his men, and sets off to go save Yara. This perfectly sets up the climax and finale of his story arc for next season. The sunglasses go back on for the climax of this episode, baby. As I predicted, this was coming for 7 whole seasons. The White Walkers finally destroyed the wall and crossed into Westeros proper. Now, I initially thought this was going to be the result of the mark that the Night's King left on Bran back in season 6. It did allow him to enter the Tree of the Three-Eyed Raven, which is protected by the same Children of the Forest magic that the wall was protected by. With that being such an obvious solution to the crossing the wall problem, I was very disappointed that they used the dragon. It just felt very contrived at first, and I thought, hey, this is super convenient that they just got this dragon and that's what they used to cross the wall. But then I did some analysis and thinking, and I realized if Bran can see the past, present, and future, why wouldn't the Night's King be able to do so as well? The Night's King seems to be the exact parallel to Bran, so it makes sense that they would have the same basic abilities. What I'm guessing happened here is that the Night's King saw into the future that they would obtain the dragon from the situation and confrontation with Daenerys and Jon in the episode before. Therefore, he calculated that dragon into his plans and purposely positioned himself near Eastwatch at that time so they could obtain the dragon, so they could use it to cross the wall. If the creators end up explaining the Night's King's powers further and reveal that to be the case, I'll be satisfied. However, if they don't dabble in that, it's going to be a little contrived and disappointed. I'm still going to hold that theory personally, but if the writers don't come out and say it, I can't really say it's absolutely canon. So does the ice dragon breathe ice? Does he breathe blue fire? Does he breathe concentrated magic? I'm going to go with the third. I think he's breathing just purely concentrated Night's King magic. I feel like that's the only thing, even from a dragon, powerful enough to destroy a wall infused with Children of the Forest magic. It's really setting up a final dragon riding battle between the Night's King on the Ice Dragon and either Jon or Daenerys on one of the other dragons. I'm guessing Jon, since they're so hammering in his Targaryen lineage this season. However, regardless of whether it's Jon or Daenerys, the issue is going to arise that Daenerys' dragons will not want to fight their own brethren. They won't be able to comprehend and realize that this dragon is no longer one of their own and has been possessed by the Night's King and practically isn't the same creature. Something will serve as a catalyst to get them over it. However, I think it's going to be a halting barrier initially as the season begins. So overall, as you probably guessed from my impassioned diatribes spattered throughout this review, I was very mixed about this episode. There was a lot I really enjoyed, but there was a lot I absolutely despised. I would say this is one of the worst season finales in recent memories, but It's Game of Thrones, one of the best shows ever made. It's not bad by any means. It's actually great. There was just stuff that I felt was very weird, very contrived, and didn't make much sense in it, and I think that's fair. Now, as to my thoughts of the season overall, I'm probably going to be making a separate video just talking about Season 7, what it meant to me, what it meant for the show, things of that matter. As we do know, the season is over. It has come to a close, and we're probably going to be waiting a year and a half for only 5 more episodes. Don't worry, during that hiatus, I will still be providing regular Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire content, a ton of explained videos, probably some prediction videos scattered here and there throughout. If Winds of Winter, the next book, happens to come out sometime between this season finale and the next season, I will be covering that in depth. So look forward to that. Now you may be thinking, with no season proper going on, it may be hard to satiate the channel with just an abundance of explanation videos. I understand that. I am going to take that into account. Look forward to the addition of other franchises on this channel. I'm not going to spoil what. I'm not going to give you any hints right now. I'm not going to spoon feed you guys. But hey, maybe it's another big, large-scale fantasy series with a lot of interconnected characters that I can analyze and talk about in the same way as Game of Thrones. One that I happen to also be a big fan of, and one that I happen to see representation in the shot right now. But if you like this video, feel free to leave a comment below. Feel free to like, subscribe, share this video with your friends. If you have any questions and would like further explanation, feel free to comment below and I'll gladly respond or even make a separate video in certain instances. Thanks guys for watching, and remember, the Professor of Thrones is here to teach you.